English again. Yeah, you've done a mistake. There's no learning. It was a multi-sensory experience. It's never been easy. Let's just be honest. I don't want to do this. It's kind of against our nature because English is not cool. English is terrible. Everything flops. We want excitement. We want curiosity. Songs, stories, but you don't think about yourself. I don't want to have another lesson with students who just don't want to be there. They maybe are kinesthetics. Everything is like tick, tick. This is when the true magic happens. When are we cooking again? It is really overlooked. No more boring worksheets. That's pretty much the life of a teacher, I guess. How can I make sure that my lesson is the best? Hi, my fellow teachers. In my 20 years of teaching, I've asked myself this question over and over again. How can I make sure that my lesson is the best? I'm going to share with you a few elements, actually 6 elements, that help our students to thrive in our classroom and to really enjoy themselves. So let's dive in. At the core of everything that I do, at the core of all of my planning is experiencing. Every time your student comes into class, they are having a specific type of experience. And your job is to make sure that their experiences are positive. So the whole point of planning a lesson and then carrying out a lesson is to make sure the experiences they have are positive. We don't want to bore them. We want excitement. We want curiosity. Okay? We want interest. That's what we want, right? So we want to create the right type of experiences. The first one, and probably one of the most important ones, is sparking interest. And it's I for interest. If your students are not interested, there's no learning. There's no learning. They're not learning anything, okay? They're just like disengaged. They're just like their brains shut down. When you plan your lesson, you cannot think about like what you would like to do, but rather like you have to try to think like, what would my students enjoy? What would be enjoyable for them? What I've noticed, for example, with my younger students, what they enjoy a lot is definitely songs, definitely stories, but interactive stories, definitely. Games, that's a big one. My students enjoy games. Some are competitive, some are non-competitive. I would say fundamental things that kids enjoy. Kids also enjoy drama. Kids enjoy movement. Kids enjoy going outside, and just like experiencing things in a different way that they would otherwise experience in a normal school setting. Number 2, create your lessons in such a way where your activities are multisensory. So they require that students use not just one sense, not just 2 senses, but all of their senses. When your students are in a class where you engage all of their senses, this is one of the deepest experiences ever. And I'm going back to that experience part. This is real experiencing. This is real life experiencing. Because how were babies experiencing language when they were learning a language? It was a multisensory experience. Or, hey, mommy changing a nappy and saying she's changing a nappy. Mommy, feeding the baby and then giving the bottle to the baby, saying, oh, you're drinking milk. It's a multi-sensory experience. And that's what we're trying to recreate in a classroom setting. It's not always possible. And I also want to say that, like, you want to think about it. And you really want to think, like, how can I make sure that my students use not just one sense, not just 2 senses, but 3, 4, 5 senses? Even the 6th sense. But you know what I mean. So it's very, very important to think about it. Okay. Number 3, engagement. So keep them engaged. It's really, really important. Very often when we plan our lessons, we focus on one element and then we're going to build around that, whatever. And then what happens is we spark their interest. We make it into a multi-sensory experience. Everything is like tick, tick. So for the first 15 minutes, everything is perfect. And then everything flops. And it's like, okay, that's it. Like, I've lost my interest. It's nothing. So it's really important to make sure that when you plan your activities, you need to make sure that each activity is engaging. And how do you make it engaging? What's really crucial is that it's different. So if you're planning 3 activities on the screen, one after the other, even though it might be, even a multi-sensory experience and it's going to be super interesting, trust me, if you're going to do it for 45 minutes straight, at some point you're going to lose their engagement. And in order to get that engagement from your students, you need to plan the activities in such a way that they're just there's a mixture of different activities. So you start with the song, then you do a little story, then you do a little game. But for example, it can be like a board game, okay? So where they sit and they just play. But then another game, okay, you can have another game and it's going to be on the screen, for example. And then another game, it can be like a movement game. It has to be dynamic. It has to be fast. It has to be super, super, super engaging. And remember, you need to keep their interest. And how do you do that? By mixing things up. That's pretty much how this works. Element number 4. hands-on activities. At my school, we love hands-on activities. And I gotta admit, guys, you have to have hands-on activities. This is when the true magic happens. This is when I see that my students are learning the language in the most natural way, because they're not really thinking about learning then. They're thinking about making something rather than learning a language. So here at my school, for example, every other week we organize workshops. This is part of the lessons. And like during these workshops, we either cook or we do some arts or crafts projects, which is really amazing. Kids love them. So there is new vocab, there is new sentence structures, there is new grammar elements in it. So that's very important. But the hands-on experiences, if you're not doing that, you have to do it. Just like leave me, just like in the comments down below, just write to me if you would actually like to have workshops in your classes. And I can definitely send you some tips on how to do it and how to start, what would be the best way to do it. Element number 5, it's emotional context. When you think about it, look, when you spark interest in your students, when you engage your students, when your activities are multi-sensory experiences, when your students are doing hands-on activities, what does that create? Positive feelings, positive emotions. The more emotions, and the positive ones, you're able to evoke in your students each and every single lesson, the better the outcomes are going to be. The better your students are going to retain the information that you were trying to get across. They're going to simply learn better, faster, and in a more fun way. The emotional context is very important. And we want to make sure we create the right type of emotional context. Because if your students are coming to the class saying, English again, that's a negative emotional context, which creates negative connotations with English. So connection to English. And then they think that English sucks. English is not cool. English is terrible. And instead, if you create a positive emotional context in the classroom, then your students are going to connect learning a language to something very positive. And they will have positive feelings about it and they will want to explore it. And that's what we want. So remember about it. Remember when you're trying to plan your lesson to think what activity should I use? Just think about it. What emotions this is going to evoke, positive or negative. All this worksheet, if I'm going to do it that way, I guess I'm just going to get the negative vibes. So how can I make this into a positive thing, right? So if I have a boring worksheet, I try to gamify it. So kids love games. So then I try to create positive emotional vibe. That's what I do. So think about it each and every time you plan your lessons and your activities within the lessons. And element number 6, and I feel like this element is very often, how would I say this, overlooked. It is really overlooked. And this element is celebrate everything. When your students come to the class, they're not confident. Their language abilities usually are not that good, or there are none at all, right? So they just kind of feel self-conscious. So it's really important then is that you create this environment where you celebrate everything. So when you plan your lesson, when you plan your activities within the lesson, what's really important is you should even write celebrate it. When you finish an activity, celebrate it. We have to be okay with them making mistakes. So we have to celebrate the effort as much as possible. We have to celebrate the courage that somebody tried to do it. Even though they were not accurate, they made a mistake. They had a lot of courage in that. Okay, thank you very much for making the mistake. So now I know what I need to teach you. That's the vibe you want to get, right? You know what I mean? So to wrap everything up, what I can say is that I want for our students to feel like learning is not a chore. Learning is fun. Learning is amazing. And learning is a positive thing. Number 1, you have to make sure that you spark the interest in your students. Then number 2, what is really important is you need to engage your students in a way where all the senses are engaged. That's the whole point. And number 3, hands-on experiences. This is very, very important. You need to make sure that they are doing things, okay? Because then that's when learning happens subconsciously, pretty much. Even though it happens, but the students don't really feel it that way. You need to keep them engaged as well. You need to make sure that they are engaged in each and every single time. It's not like they're engaged in one activity and then disengaged in another one. You need to make sure throughout the whole lesson, they're super engaged. So you need to mix and match the activities you want to do with your students. The ones that are interesting, the ones that are hands-on, the ones that are multi-sensory. And then you also have to create this emotional context, because that is when your students are going to want to come to your classes and are going to learn way, way better because they're going to have these positive associations with your English. And then last one, which is very often overlooked, is celebrate everything. Make sure you celebrate everything that your student tries to do.